To channel your innate magic, you must tense the muscles of your soul.
These words echoed within Cog's mind as he ducked around the guard's furious blows. He felt something stir within him. He tried to grasp it as he avoided the blows, hoping to end this duel quickly with it, whatever it may be. But every time he attempted to get a hold of it, it slipped between his fingers. Without warning and caught off guard from being distracted for half a second, he felt a massive pressure erupt from his opponent, and he instinctively held up his arms and rolled around the foe's punch. Time seemed to slow down for Cog as he saw just what he had evaded by the skin of his teeth. The guard's fist had erupted with searing, vibrant magenta flames. They danced and licked up the guard's arm, narrowly brushing past Cog's face. This pressure, this enigmatic aura that he could feel in his gut, in his very being, coursing throughout himself in a far less concentrated way. The guard growled and threw another flaming fist at the Peck, who got nicked by the blow and immediately recoiled in pain. The fire had licked the side of his face, leaving a small patch of lightly seared skin, and Cog leapt back in a vain attempt to assimilate into the crowd. They merely shoved him back towards the guard, and Cog was fully unable to dodge the next flaming blow, directly in his gut. It singed his rags, it crippled Cog, and it sent him directly to the ground. However, Cog noticed something. That pressure that had warned him before, like a sixth sense. It emitted from the guard every time he threw another flaming punch. Was that magic? It could have been. And if it was, Cog had an idea. He performed a mock dodge, this time purposely getting hit by the punch and getting sent face first into the turf yet again. He allowed himself to identify the flames around the fist and the specific pressure that the guard was giving off with each furious attack. After shakily standing up yet again, he took the same posture as the guard and attempted to emit the same pressure, the same feeling. But nothing happened. This left Cog open to another swing, and the half-orc took full advantage, driving his fist home with a savage haymaker to the Peck's left cheek, and launching him with a ferocious follow-through. Cog went spiraling into the remains of the stables, which caught fire and began a blazing inferno around him, before he hit the ground hard and tumbled a considerable distance. He didn't want to move, and he hurt. The guard just looked puzzled before piecing it all together and laughing hysterically.
Oi! You really thought your sorry ass could summon up some magic without proper training? You wee twat!
The guard howled with laughter.
Copying me pose and all to boot! What a fucking riot!
The crowd remained silent, however, and Cog took a deep breath. He barely managed to lean up, and luckily the guard didn't seem to notice. Cog took another deep breath, far slower this time, and felt a similar pressure, one inside his chest. He felt the pressure pushing against him, squirming and writhing in an attempt to burst from him, becoming far denser, more concentrated. Cog toyed with different muscles and movements until he felt the pressure begin to direct itself into his right arm, his main arm. Cog repeated the actions constantly, taking slow, deep breaths, gradually standing up, keeping the same pose the entire time, tensing muscles, shifting weight. The guards laughing only intensified as the Peck stood against him yet again.
Oi, this one wants another go at it! Your funeral, you overgrown—
The guard paused, air knocked out of his lungs by a sudden and quick punch to his gut. The half-orc broke into a coughing fit, and Cog stood, arm emitting mild amounts of brass-colored steam. He maintained his position and the guard reeled. The guard was interrupted by another coughing fit. Cog simply, and slowly, shifted into the same pose he had gotten off the ground in, maintaining it with considerable effort. The pressure was building up again inside of him, and he was directing it into his arm again. More this time. He had hoped that this first attempt would knock the guard unconscious so he could escape, but he had no such luck. The guard finally caught his breath after gasping suddenly.
You're a damned bastard!
The half-orc bellowed as he rushed Cog, both fists raised and ignited. His eyes had ignited as well, the guard howling primally before charging at Cog. The Peck was not ready for what came next. The guard had kicked his personal dial up to 11, launching furious kicks and punches, sending Cog ricocheting around the makeshift battlefield, cracking trees and searing flesh. Cog still tried to remain in the same position, but it was quite difficult. He tried sending more pressure to his arm, but it was slow going. Cog needed time, and the guard was not inclined to give him any such luxury. The guard's flurry of blows didn't slow down, and Cog could feel himself boiling and bruised. The pressure still wasn't enough by his estimates, and he couldn't last long enough at the hands of this man. He was too fast, too strong. Cog tried to think, but every idea was shot down with a kick to the head or a punch to the gut. His instincts tried to come in, but he refused to allow them to take over with the adrenaline in his veins and all the willpower he could muster. He was well and truly stuck between his own morals and a powerful opponent, and was doing everything he could to simply not die. The guard, after a solid 90 seconds of abuse, stood tall, breathing heavily, wiping sweat off of his brow, and finally laid off the peck. Cog lay beaten and burned, bruised and bloodied, one eye swollen shut, and suffered a dislocated left arm. His clothes were in tatters, and his mind was foggy. The peck couldn't move, and the half-orc spit on the ground next to him. Cog kept trying to put pressure into his arm, but he couldn't focus nearly well enough to. The half-orc's fist lit on fire one last time, the flame twice as hot, as he eyed Cog without an ounce of humor left on his face.
I'm gonna put you down, monstrosity. When you see me partner in the afterlife, tell him I did this to you for him.
Time slowed. The flames grew ever hotter. The fist came closer. Cog felt like throwing up, and he couldn't breathe properly. He took inventory of his body, and it seemed nothing was properly working. Then, he felt it. A spark, a flame, a burning that rapidly spread throughout his chest, then his whole body telling him to keep living. His legs tensed, and adrenaline doubled down. His mind ignored the pain racking him as Cog leapt underneath the half-orc's punch, diving between the guard's legs and stopping behind him. Cog's right arm erupted with the pressure he felt before, and he heard a hasty whirring. Something registered in his peripheral vision that nearly made him lose his hard-earned focus. Where that whirring came from, his right arm. Were those gears? It was as though his arm was an axle for a bizarre machine. Bronze pinions glimmering and blurred due to the rapid motion. The brass steam returned with these ethereal ratchets, and Cog gritted his teeth. He puffed out his chest. He solidified his stance. His arm tensed, and he threw a single, massive, lightning-quick, stepping overhand punch directly into the square of the half-orc's back. There was a sizable crack resounding in the air, and Cog leaned heavily into the follow-through and drove the guard into the ground, just as he had done to Cog prior. Cog was frozen in place for a few moments, the sudden and instinctual adrenaline rush fading from his body. He hobbled slowly to the guard's neck, the crowd more silent than ever. Cog checked the guard's pulse, definitely there, and discovered that the half-orc was still breathing.
He is alive,
Cog muttered under his breath before passing out alongside the guard. When he awoke, Cog found that he was alone and untouched. Nobody was around him at all. Nobody tended to his wounds, and nobody tried to hurt him further. He couldn't go back, only forward. He had nothing to his name, hardly even having the clothes on his back anymore. The previous scrap had taken care of that. He wanted healing. He wanted relief from this pain. But above all, he wanted answers. Cog stood and began limping away from the town, alone. He felt ill, he felt weak, and he felt vulnerable. His body ached, and his stomach felt well beyond empty, almost as though it was eating itself. As the stables blazed behind him, all Cog could think about was if the guard was okay, if he himself had been in the wrong, if he should even still be alive. He sifted through his thoughts before turning once more to look back at the stables, suddenly remembering something he had tried to fend off the urge to take before the guard. He hesitated,